He survived, walked through hell in Normandy, watched his friends die, dragged wounded boys from the line of fire, laid in the mud with a bullet in his gut, and held on to one thought: I'll make it back. The house, the wife, the life he had left behind. They were the light at the end of the tunnel. Letters didn't come often, but when they did, he read them again and again. They smelled of flour and soap. They smelled like home. When the war was over, he didn't cry. He just boarded the train and went home. He came back in one piece, with a medal. But the place he thought was home was no longer his, and ahead of him waited a truth more devastating than any war. His name was James Malone. He worked at the coal yard, not a supervisor, but the kind of man they trusted with the hardest jobs. He knew his equipment. He knew how to work with people. He was never late. By the age of 23, he was already in charge of a small shift. People didn't respect him for talking loud. They respected him because he always did more than he said. Folks used to say, if Malone did it, there's no need to double-check. Ellen was different, beautiful, cold, with perfect posture and eyes that looked right through you. James fell in love the moment he saw her. She answered with a polite no. He didn't back down. The first date, unanswered. The second bouquet, left on her porch. On the third attempt, he tried something else. He didn't take her to a cafe or a dance. Instead, he rented an old abandoned barn outside of town, strung up lights, brought a portable record player and the vinyl of her favorite song. That night, she laughed for the first time, really laughed. She kicked off her shoes, danced barefoot. And when the light rain started, she didn't run for cover. She just stood there, smiling at the sky. She said, "You're stubborn." He answered, "You're worth being stubborn for." 6 months later, they got married. A year after that, they had a house of their own. Quiet happiness, morning coffee, and a woman he loved down to the bone. June 6, 1944. The coast of Normandy. Operation Overlord. James didn't know those words. He only knew the cold of steel and the taste of salt on his lips. In the landing craft, someone was praying. Someone else was already giving up. And he just kept his hand on the bolt and thought, you have to come back. She'll be scared alone. When the door opened, time disappeared. Sand exploded. The air turned black, screaming everywhere. He didn't remember getting out, just the sound in his ears. A high-pitched ringing, and the metallic taste in his mouth. James didn't count his steps. He just walked. In front of his eyes, Ellen. A photo of her taken at dawn with the old station in the background. She was smiling into the camera like everything was going to be okay. He went through 3 days of hell, lost 6 men from his unit. One was his closest friend. The other, Walt, 19. Still a kid. James pulled Walt out, carried him, held him together, and then just left him in the arms of the medics and walked away. He couldn't look into the eyes of someone who should have died instead of him. That night, in the woods, while everyone else slept, James took out a letter. The third one, that month. Ellen wrote that the cat had run away, that she didn't like the new kind of coffee. She asked, "Are you still eating too fast? Still wearing that ridiculous cap?" He smiled. For the first time in days, lit a cigarette, pressed the letter to his chest, and realized he no longer remembered what her voice sounded like. Just the words, the ink, the paper, already yellowing with time. Everything else was noise, dust, metal. The next morning, they found a medallion near his foxhole, a photo of a child inside, German soldier. James buried it in the dirt and told no one. He understood. People die the same way here. Only the letters look different, and the coffee is brewed differently. He changed after that. Didn't break. Didn't turn bitter. He just got quieter. Spoke less. And every letter he got, he read 3 times. Because in those letters was something he no longer carried inside him. He came back. It had been more than a year. He passed through New York, then took the train, and now here it was, the same small station, just a stone's throw from home. The snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air was already cold, sharp, just like it always was in their town near the end of fall. She stood at the edge of the platform. Ellen. Same hairstyle, same coat, same quiet posture. She saw him and waved immediately. No theatrics, no slow motion, just a smile, a real one. He walked toward her. She hugged him tight like she was afraid he might disappear again. "You're back," she said. He heard a small sigh, barely noticeable. Not pain, just relief. The house smelled like pie and a hint of cinnamon. His cup was still in its place. She set down the tea and started talking. About the neighbor who now grows pumpkins. About the mailman who's always late. About the day she wore his old shirt. Just to feel like you were still around. He listened. Nodded. She didn't feel like a stranger. Just not in love. There was warmth in her voice, but it was the warmth of home, of routine, of someone you care about, but don't love the way you once thought. When she went to do the dishes, he pulled out a photo from his pocket, the one he'd carried through the front. Ellen, standing in front of the old station. He looked at the photo, then at her, through the kitchen doorway. And for the first time, he realized time hadn't only passed for him. That night, he didn't fall asleep right away. She lay beside him, steady breath, calm hands. He felt warmth, but it wasn't his. It was just there, like the light from a lamp. The first few days felt like a dream. Everything was in place. Dinner, radio, fresh bread, morning coffee. Only he stood a little off to the side like a guest in his own life. In the closet, he came across a coat, a man's coat, thin, almost new. He held it in his hands and remembered he used to have one just like it before the war. He hung it back up, probably just something left behind from some old life. On the 3rd day, the guests came. Ellen's friends, women he barely knew. They laughed, brought pie, asked about the war. He smiled, nodded. Her brother came, too, gave her a long hug, talked about the repairs in town. "You have no idea how worried we were," he said. But when James suggested they talk about high school, her brother looked away and abruptly changed the subject. And then there was the neighbor, Mr. Davis. They had barely spoken before. The conversation was plain. "How's your health? How was the journey? How are you feeling?" But there was something strange in his voice. Not in the words, but in the spaces between them, as if he'd already said what mattered and decided not to say more. Ellen moved through the room like she belonged there, pouring tea, smiling, adjusting the blanket on a friend's lap. She was at ease, too much at ease, too much her own. James couldn't name what felt wrong, but one night it hit him. They were all living as if he was never coming back, as if he were a guest, loved, but never quite expected. He lay beside Ellen that night, listened to her breathing, and caught himself thinking, I should feel happy. All I feel is politeness. He wasn't angry. He wasn't suspicious. But something inside him was slowly building a quiet sense that he no longer belonged. Not an enemy, not a visitor, just extra. The conversation didn't happen in a quarrel. Just one evening, when the tea had gone cold and the dishes were done, the silence got too loud. He stared out the window for a long time, then turned to her and asked quietly, "Is something wrong?" "Number. Everything's fine. You're right here. But it's like I'm looking through glass. I can feel everything except you." She pressed her lips together, said nothing. "Ellen, be honest." He sat across from her, hands resting on the table. "You weren't expecting me, were you?" She didn't answer right away, lifted her eyes, then dropped them again, folded her hands. I didn't know if you'd come back, and if you did, I didn't know who you'd be." He nodded, got up, set his cup in the sink, then stood still. "Did you fall in love with someone?" A long pause. She didn't look away, but her voice had a sound in it, like something inside had started to crack. "I didn't mean to. I really... James, I wasn't pretending. I was fine with you. But with him, it felt different, not safe, alive. Do you understand?" He turned away, gripped the edge of the sink. "I pulled men out of fire, Ellen. I thought I had to. Thought you were waiting. Thought you were home. You were home. But then I stopped waiting, and I realized I couldn't live only in the past." He didn't speak, but when he sat down again, something in his voice had changed. Not anger, not resentment, just emptiness. "How long were you together?" "About a year." "Does he know you're back with me?" "He said, I'll step aside. He's your husband." "And you?" I don't even know who I belong to anymore." He closed his eyes, whispered, "To no one. You don't belong to anyone. Not even me." He didn't sleep that night. For the first time in a long time. Not because of the war, but because of the silence lying beside him in bed. Ellen had her eyes closed. She didn't cry. She just didn't speak. And he knew there was nothing left to say. In the morning, she made coffee. A regular day. Sunshine. Radio. Comfort. And the emptiness between them so thick you could stand a spoon in the air. He sat down, drank half a cup, said, "I'm going to get some air." "Okay?" He walked the streets, where he once knew every sign, every smell. Everything had changed. Even the bakery didn't smell the same. On the corner near the post office, he ran into Mr. Davis, the same Mr. Davis, polite, calm, as if nothing had ever happened. "Out for a walk?" "Yeah, the air feels different. Even the house smells different." Davis nodded slowly. "A lot can change in that kind of time." James looked at him. Long, straight. He already knew. He'd known for a while. "You were there for her, weren't you?" "Yes. No excuses. No backpedaling. Just honesty. Too late." James felt a flash of rage, hot, sudden, but his face stayed blank. He'd seen too much, felt too much. He could have taken this man apart. Right here. Had the training, the hands, the will. But what would that fix? Was it even Davis's fault? They stood in silence. The city moved behind them. Kids shouting, radio from a porch. The sound of a life that had kept going, and in that silence everything was already said. "Take care of her. She's..." He stopped mid-sentence. Heavy sigh. "Doesn't matter anymore," and walked away. He came back around evening. The snow had started to fall sparse, brittle, like even the sky didn't want the day to end. Ellen was in the kitchen. She didn't turn when he walked in, but by her posture, he knew. She felt it. "You were gone a while." "Yeah." I went out to think. He took off his coat, sat down at the table. She sat across from him. No walls, no masks, just a woman, facing a man who had already lost everything he could lose. I can't stay, even if I want to. She didn't answer. He went on. I'll be honest. I know I've been betrayed, but I still feel something for you. Or maybe not for you, for the version of you I knew years ago. But we can't live in a memory, not anymore. Her voice trembled. Just a little. I never meant for it to turn out like this. Neither did I. But you made your choice. He pulled out the letter, not from his pocket, from somewhere deeper, set it on the table. Read it. Not now. Later. I'm afraid I won't be able to. You've always been stronger than you thought, even when it came to destroying something. He paused, just for a moment. Ellen, it's time we said goodbye. I won't wish you happiness in marriage. I'll just wish you don't make the same mistake again. She reached out, touched his arm gently, as if saying sorry without saying a word. He nodded, but didn't smile. Where will you go? Somewhere I'm needed and still alive. He stood. She didn't follow, didn't try to stop him. He knew if she had said even one word, he would have stayed. But she didn't, not a single word, and he left. Forever. 3 days passed. Ellen didn't open the letter. It lay on the dresser next to his cup, the one she hadn't touched. She walked past it, looked at it, sighed. Inside there was fear, not of reading, but of recognizing, of hearing something too honest. On the 4th day, she tucked it into the pantry. She didn't have the strength. Not then. 10 years went by. Davis was gone. Ellen never forgot the letter, she just lost it. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Now she was moving, packing up the house. And the letter reappeared. She recognized it instantly, unfolded it slowly. The paper cracked like a dry branch. Ellen, if you're reading this, it means I left after all. Not because I was weak, but because you didn't say, stay. You were silent. And in that silence was your truth. I'm not writing to accuse you. I just want you to know. I really did love you. Not with some storybook kind of love, but the kind where breakfast and care and silence also count as words. You were my war, my home, my mission, and maybe my illusion. I wasn't just fighting for my country, I was fighting to come back to the window where you were waiting, only to find you'd already gone inside. A different window, a different sun. If you had asked, I would have stayed, but you chose not to. We all make choices. The only thing that matters is whether or not we regret them in the end. Ellen closed the letter. Her hands were shaking. She didn't cry. She tried not to. Then she stood up and opened the window. Cold air poured into the room. A cup remained on the table, and the letter, and a woman who, for the first time in years, realized she had lost the man for whom she had once been the sun, and in return, she couldn't even be just a person.